Where's the, oh, here's the recording. Oh, gallery view, that's what I mean. Okay, yeah, we're recording. Thanks, Gary G.
Gary G, did you turn on the recording?
Yeah, see right there.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary G. Thank you for being with us, everyone. I hope everyone's happy and well. How many people live in the United States? Just want to take a little look here.
Oh, yeah, Brian. Yeah. Cindria. Aaron.
All right. So we're living in a crazy times. Would everyone agree? Yeah. You know, I don't know if anybody watched the news last night, but I thought I was watching a horror movie when I happened to turn on the news before I went to bed and saw riots taking place just about in some really big American cities. I was mortified. Really, really scary, yeah. Just to see how much anger, how much division, how much fear, looting, disgraceful behavior. But for a very, very important reason, you know, for those who don't know about what happened, it was really a shocking experience to watch what happened to that poor man. And I can understand the anger and the divide, but I mean, there really is no excuse for that type of looting and behavior. It's very sad to see. So we can see how we're living in times of contrast. So I really thought that, you know, Ramaji and I discussed how important our emotions are during, you know, these times, and how easy it is to fall into shame and blame and anger, hatred, division within us. It happens within us. You know, no one knows what's going on and everybody's trying to make sense of a situation that just seems really confusing. And because we're living in confusing times, spiritual people are able to somehow rise above what we call the opposites. Because there's a sense of being that can transcend the division, can transcend the rights and the wrongs. But it doesn't mean that you're in a transcendental state where you're not really engaged in your emotional body. On the contrary, it actually becomes richer and more prevalent to actually experience your emotions and feel your emotions and become more emotionally mature as you develop spiritually. The higher your LOC, the more you're able to really feel what is going on versus think and plan. You know, the thinking mind is very needed, especially now, but it doesn't, it's at the back seat of our car. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about, and Ramaji and I are both going to talk about emotional intelligence, what that really looks like. Because I think a lot of people are not emotionally intelligent. A lot of people don't even allow themselves to feel their emotions. More often than not, what people do is they actually jump into the spiritual game, hoping to transcend their emotions altogether and to be in a blissful state and not be touched by anything that has to do with reality or life. When it's paradoxical, the opposite happens. You actually become way more involved, and the beauty and the richness of the duality is the point. We're here to experience our lives in all of its beauty, in all the contrast, not to pretend that we're not in it or to somehow not be in our bodies. It becomes difficult when things like this happen in the world and we somehow feel confused. It's very confusing. So I want to talk about emotional intelligence along with awakening today. What is a sign of an emotionally intelligent person? The first sign is that we can experience mixed emotions. In other words, there is a complexity within our emotional body. We can feel that we love someone very much, and yet at the same time, we can feel very angry at them for various reasons. It's not black or white, it's both. You can have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a spouse or a child. You can get really angry at them, but at the same time, you know that you love them. You can have the different emotions will always reflect the nuances of a situation. It's by engaging in really observing your emotions, observing what it is that you're feeling, what is coming up. You know, how you can have these differing emotions. A lot of people think that because you feel confused or because you have differing emotions, it's a sign of emotional immaturity. It has to be one way or the other. It's never one way or the other. It's not neither. It's not neither or either or neither nor. It's always a mix. It's a bundle. When you mature emotionally, you get this. You get this on a very deep level. Emotionally immature people are black and white people. And it's interesting because we can look at our leaders, the leaders. In the United States, it's very easy to see. It's so black or white, us against them. I'm right, you're wrong. And a society will never work. It can't sustain itself when it's us against them. They are all, you know, whichever side of the side you find yourself on, you have to understand that there will be good and bad in each side. That's why I always say, listen to opposing points of view. Recognize that there will always be some truth in another person's reality that may not be in alignment with your own, but it really doesn't matter, okay? Emotionally immature people rule out any ambivalence. They rule out any complication. It's not complicated. It's this or it's that. And then, so you can see how it can't be that way anymore. And what I suggest for all of us right now, regardless of where you're at, it's so important right now to remain in a kind of neutral position where you're able to, you know, in other words, not to take a definite side, but rather listen to all the opposing sides. Allow yourself to feel whatever it is that you're feeling. Eventually what happens is you become, there is an element of clarity that arises within people. The more emotionally mature you are, the more you're able to not like kind of disengage from your emotions. You're actually able to feel them and to express them, to talk about them. And to communicate effectively. People fight and get angry when basically there's just a meltdown. There's no communication. There's no ability to communicate effectively. You know, it's a continuous fight. I'm right, you're wrong. You're wrong, I'm right. And that's what we're seeing happening right now in the world. And you know what? I think the contrast is needed in a way, because, you know, whenever there's such contrast, there's such what seems to be so much disturbance on the one hand, it always means there's light on the other. The nature of our realm is dual. It's duality within us and around us. You cannot have an up without a down. You cannot have a high without a low. When you understand that, you can kind of, you flow with it. I understand that today I may have an amazing day. I have no idea what will transpire. Ramaji may piss me off beyond all measure. We may even have an argument. I don't know. We may have a beautiful time together. But ultimately, I don't have to know, because I understand that it's always going to be, there's always going to be a dance. There's always going to be duality. And so I'm always going to be able to address the moment depending on what I feel at that particular moment in time, without having to know. The confusion comes in because we all want order. We all want to know. We all want control. So we've really been given a big lesson, and there is no real control. And where do we stand? Can we exist without having any control? Was there ever any control? And the more we cling to control, the more we feel as if the rug is being pulled from under us. As you develop a kind of position, you know, as Ramaji says, Ananda, you need to take a position. I said, I don't know what my position is. My position changes every minute of the day. You know, one minute I'm in this mood and the next minute in that. What position is there to take? You know, but I can't seem to take a position, especially now when there aren't enough facts for a position. Mm-hmm. So as I take a position, I feel as if, oh my God, the rug's being pulled under me again. I'm falling again. And I'm always feel like I'm falling. Yes, it's called being a woman. Isn't it interesting I always say the world may be a slightly better place if there were more females in leadership positions, because females are in touch with their emotional bodies. Men are becoming more and more so. Women tend to be more in the gray area, ambivalent area. There's more empathy and sympathy, whereas men take a position. I'm right. It can often lead to violence and a distortion. We have to see more amalgamation of the feminine and the masculine, the feminine energy. It's going to take time in our world today. Ramaji, do you want to say anything about control? I think you should.
Well, I want to talk about what I think is kind of denied in terms of spiritual teachings and the whole spiritual model, the whole spiritual awakening model, which is they don't know what to do with emotions. And the reality is, for most of us, there's a journey, which you don't really find in the books, but it's a journey of really accepting our emotions, our emotional nature as it is. There's this whole idea of being perfect and living up to some ideal, some image, and that's all bullshit. Because what being enlightened and being awakened means, you're not going to fit any mold. You're not going to conform to somebody else's idea of how you should be. You're going to be the way that you are. And being the way that you are comes from your feelings. And to really know what you feel, embrace what you feel, and live what you feel, and say what you feel, act what you feel, you have to, most people, certainly myself and Ananda, have gone on a journey of discovering what that is, and owning it, and then living from it. And so this is emotional authenticity, and this is emotional freedom.
I want to also mention, while Ramaji says that, whenever I'm talking to students, sometimes I speak to couples, quite a lot of couples recently, interestingly, as well as individuals. And I always say that to live in a vulnerable place is one of the hardest things to do. You're going to be one in many million. People walk around with armor around their souls, afraid of being authentic, afraid of being vulnerable, and mainly it's afraid of being themselves. Too afraid to even voice an opinion because their opinion may not be agreed with. You see, and what happens is there's a suppression of, you don't feel like you are being yourself. You feel uneasy, you feel discontent. You don't feel happy in your relationships because you feel too afraid to even express what it is that you want or desire. It never works. When you wake up, the armor starts to dissolve. It takes time, it integrates. Suddenly you feel like you're walking around with no armor. You're walking around and somebody can say something to you that you may feel very upset about, and you may even burst into tears because that could hurt you. There's no armor. You're allowing yourself to be vulnerable to what people say. You are to the reality of being a human being. What frustrates me more than ever in non-dual circles is this idea that you lose your humanity. It's almost like everything's going to be hunky-dory and beautiful and wonderful forevermore. I'm going to be in bliss. I'm going to be dissociated from my feeling body. I'm not even a part of the world. I'm somehow an elevated being now, feeling a blissful state 24/7. It makes no sense. How can anybody sell that idea? It's taking away from the responsibility of being in control, understanding your emotions, and being a human being. The point is not to get to a place where you're not involved. It's to become and really enjoy the involvement itself. That's the paradox. I'm no longer beyond anything. I'm a part of everything. It's the little goat that climbs to the top of the mountain. Oh, I'm here, I'm in the light. Wow, it's really light up here. And all of a sudden, he hears the cries of humanity below on the ground. And it's like, you know what? I'm here all alone. I don't even want to be. I'm going to climb back down. I'm going to serve. And the more you serve, the more that little butterfly called happiness comes to sit on your shoulder. All of a sudden you're giving. All of a sudden you're part of nature now. Your desire is to share. Share your love, share your knowledge, share your beauty, share your heart, share your soul, share a smile. And with that sharing consciousness, you are letting go of that little me, the little me who just wants everything to go its way, to be in control of itself. Little me needs to be in control of its little life in order to feel that it can be, that it's safe. It's all ego. It's all a fixation. When you let go of that, what's left? You're in touch with the universal flow. And it's damn hard when there's so few people that are in that universal flow, because you feel like a freak. You know, you're walking around in a vulnerable state, whereas most people don't feel any form of vulnerability, like they're robots. There seems to be no real caring, no real sharing, and everyone's in it for one reason, in it for themselves. Not recognizing the damage they're doing, not only to others, but to themselves. So what do they decide? Oh gosh, I'm lost. I need to wake up. So what do? They find a teacher. What is that teacher selling? Love and bliss. Really? You need to get real. It's time. Everybody needs to wake up to the reality of what's going on with themselves and in the world. That's what this is really about. Coming home to what is. Isness. I think isness is the best word that I've ever heard, by the way. It's the only word that really makes any sense. It's not high, it's not low, it's sahaja, it's the natural state it is. When you say it is and you can be with this as it is, and you can understand that sometimes the greatest aha is that there is no aha, and that is the aha. Sit with that. Because this is it. Where does that leave you? Floating. It's beautiful. Can you just be yourself? With all your picadillos, as Ramaji says. I love you, he says to me, with all your picadillos. There are many. What do you want to say, Ramaji?
Well, as far as what you just said, isness, what is, this is it, this is the way it is. That's not, understand, we're not talking about what the mind is perceiving or thinking about things, or thinking about this is it. It's related to the emotional vulnerability we were just talking about. That to receive this moment as it is an act of love. It's making love. It's union. It's fusion. It's embracing. It's accepting. It's love. It's unconditional love. It's allowing this moment, no matter what it looks like, regardless of the packaging, regardless of the wrapping on the wrapping paper on the present of the present. We take the gift. We receive the gift. And as one teacher put it, when asked, are you in a state of bliss? He said, no, I'm actually in a place that's better than that. And they said, the interviewer said, well, what could possibly be better than bliss? He said, everything to me, every moment has infinite, precious value. Now that is what we're talking about. That's what we're advocating. We're not claiming we live in some infinite thing, but what we're saying is that's the potential of every single moment. And when you value this moment as being priceless, regardless of how it looks in the moment to the mind, then the this is it opens up. And I'm not exactly sure what Ananda's emphasis is, but what my emphasis would be is that when you allow it to open up, when you embrace it, you find, you know, whatever it looked like, it has a pearl inside. There's gold inside. It's a gift. It's extremely precious, no matter what it appears to be.
Absolutely.
And that's the secret of living.
It's the preciousness. It's precious because it's real. It's precious because it is. You see, that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, but it's precious because the actual nature of life, of things itself, is it's founded on a generosity. You know, we're only, all of us are here only because of the gift of the sun, and the gift of the air, and the gift of the water, and the gift of the food, and the gift of this planet itself, and the gift of the solar system. I mean, gift upon gift upon gift. We're only here because of the generosity of reality.
Mm-hmm. But now I want to just talk a little bit about the human condition, because I want to, you know, again, I don't want to go into concepts about the now.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about empathy, and
you know, I really want to talk about emotional immaturity and maturity, one versus the other, so we can each, you know, we can spend the next month contemplating where we find ourselves, you know, how we can improve on that level. So let's talk a little bit about I've made some notes. Yeah. You know, the way we deal with stress, to become emotionally intimate with other people. For example, when I'm sitting with a complete stranger in a session, what I'm looking for is a development of some form of emotional intimacy with a person, where we no longer are separate in a sense. We're both two human beings. We are a part of each other. We share an essence, but we're able to communicate from a place of vulnerability and truth. That's the only way sessions can work. You know, it's heart to heart, not mind to mind, you know? And so when you deal with emotionally immature people, will undermine another person's ability to deal with stress and to be emotionally intimate. Emotionally immature people don't enjoy emotional intimacy. They undermine it. They want to speak in facts. What are the facts? It causes so much frustration because the conversation is only reporting facts. It has no meaningfulness. The way we converse with people has got to become meaningful. And the way it becomes meaningful is via feeling. When you're talking about concepts, yeah, it's great. You know, I can talk about this and I can talk about that and ideas. But when I come from a place of, I feel this, I feel that, and they say, yeah, I know how you feel. I felt that before. You're developing an intimacy. You're developing something meaningful. You're meeting each other as human beings. A meeting of the minds is different to a meeting of the heart. When the heart opens, it's almost as if like the mind has to take a back seat, because it becomes like a pointless conversation you're having with yourself, trying to figure things out that are really, at the most of the time, meaningless concepts. How am I behaving in my reality? How am I conversing with others? Am I being honest with myself? Am I overcoming my fear of vulnerability? If so, how is that happening for me? These are the kinds of questions you start to address within yourself, you know, and depending on your fixation, which again, some Enneagram work is the ultimate work you can do, you know, to understand how it is that you're blocking your ability to actually become complete. We have the what is in my shadow, how do I incorporate that into my shadow? For example, a 5 will have tremendous difficulty understanding emotions. They've cut them off. A 6 will have a similar problem. They have a logical mind, always thinking and planning. A 4 will dive into their feelings immediately, to the point that they will probably go down a black hole, because they overcome with emotion. They have to really work on thinking more, planning more. Action, more action. So depending on our type, you can see we all have our work to do as far as being a personality is concerned. And that's the joy. You know, that's the work. The more emotionally mature we become, the more we're able to sit with whatever comes up without the resistance. When you recognize that resistance is only there because we fixated on it being a certain way, we want to be in control. You're not letting the divine or trusting the divine wisdom that is you run your show. It has to run your show at least 90% of the time. It knows what it's doing, you know. There's a switch over from that divine knowing to the thinking and the planning and the thising and the thating. You have to move out the way. But in order to know what needs to move out the way, you have to understand yourself, know thyself. There's no magic trick. So I wanted to talk about that, and I've got some more notes unless there's something more you want to say there.
Yeah, well, I think the context for this, for vulnerability and a meaningful conversation and intimacy, is that the individual is on a journey of owning their own darkness. And this just takes time, and it's a process, and definitely Enneagram can really help with this. For me, the definition of emotional maturity and intimacy is empathy. Now, empathy is poorly understood, even by people who are empaths, because Ananda and I have talked a lot about it. We both individually explored it because we're both deeply empathic. And yes, it definitely can mean that you feel other people's feelings, or you know what they're feeling, and so on and so forth. But in practical terms, when I've tried to grasp, well, what would this mean for everybody, for most people, it would be that they actually think about other people and think about, you know, their welfare, their benefit. What will be the impact of what I'm doing, the impact of what I'm saying? Will this benefit the other person and not myself? Because as shocking as it is, people who are truly selfish and narcissistic and very self-involved actually do not think that way. They do not think about others except, you know, how they will gain from them. They do not actually think, what will this hurt that person? What will be the impact on this other person? They don't think that way. So empathic thinking is actually the bridge in relationship. You know, when you're in a relationship, you know, I'm going to think, well, how will this impact Ananda? And Ananda's going to, how is this going to impact Ramaji? And that's a big part of the relationship. If we never thought that way, what kind of relationship would we have? So I just want that to be clear to everybody, especially if you haven't reflected on that. In general, we have to embrace our own shadow and our own darkness. And what happens with a lot of people, especially people who are new to spiritual work or aren't doing it, is they don't want to deal with their shadow. And even when we're spiritual people, and even when we're awakened people, we still have a bias against owning our shadow, our darkness, our shit. We actually don't want to own it. We don't want to face it. We don't want to admit it. So all of us have to go on a voluntary journey to face it. And, you know, we even go, well, what's the point? You know, but when we do that, otherwise you see there's the mechanism of denial. But when we do that, that's when the love and compassion and empathy can really go to another level, because we're no longer projecting or not projecting very much onto others our own stuff. Otherwise, what happens is a person tends to project their shadow, their darkness on others automatically. And this is what creates the problems. This is what creates the war. The conflict is projection, unconscious projection. You know, and sometimes with the deep empath, there is what is called introjection, which means I'm taking on their problem when I perceive to be their suffering, their problem. But that's relatively rare. That's what the empath does. Most people are not empathic, not very empathic. I'd say 5% or less of the population is probably deeply empathic. So the real issue is basically, in terms of emotional freedom, authenticity, self-expression, and love, it is to own your own shadow and know what it is, and not be projecting it on others. You know, otherwise we're going to see our shadow on others and think it's them.
But that's also part of the beauty, being triggered. The minute you're triggered, you're able to understand, oh, I can see there's some judgment in me.
Well, that's when you have a projection that's already there. You're seeing your projection in action. Absolutely. You're triggered means you've got skin in the game there. You've got a stake, you know, and you're reacting to your projection, but it's an unconscious thing. And you're right, that makes it conscious. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and so whenever you look at the various issues that arise in our lives that feel like they're a curse, you know, it feels like it makes us feel uncomfortable, sad and upset, or whatever the emotion that arises. You're able to always look at it from a different perspective. Look, wow, I've really been blessed here. I get to be triggered. I get to understand myself better. I get to see what I still need to work on. You know, and the minute you change your mind about that, the minute you start kind of understanding your reality that way, you look forward to being triggered. That's the funny thing. You look forward to it because you get it. It's almost like those are the layers. Those are the layers of the onion. And, you know, I did talk about this. I'm sorry, I have to talk about my book. My book goes into this in great detail. You know, this is a process that took me many years that I'm still involved in post-awakening. In other words, you know, you can't get away from being you, you know, and whatever's in the way that's false has to arise. You have to see what you have to work on.
And this is why we're big advocates of relationship. You know, certainly the intimate relationship, but all relationships, they are actually, you know, once you at whatever degree of awakening or, you know, spirituality you achieve, the relationships in your life, especially the ones where you have become really vulnerable and really open and have exposed yourself, and that other person has permission to give you real feedback and react to you, and you're just another human being with them. This is the growth continues. The unfolding continues, the expanding will continue, but it's easy once you're an awakened person to isolate, and you see it all the time with the gurus, you know, oh, I'm good, you know, and they put on their act, and then who knows how they are behind closed doors, but nobody talks about that. In fact, what really matters is how are they behind closed doors, not how are they when they're performing in front of others, just like any other performer. They could look great, but their private life is something else. So what we're saying is there is no private life, there is no public life, there is no spirituality except a spirituality that applies to everything that you do and say, all of your relationships, from your dog to your wife or husband, to your job, to your family, to the world as it is now. You know, what's your choice? How do you want to respond? The world's in our face. Make a choice, take an action. Come from feeling, be vulnerable, be honest. How can I express love and compassion in this situation? And we're not saying it's easy. You know, we're talking too about, well, what should we do? And we're doing different things and not doing certain things. And you know, but definitely be a part of the mix, you know.
The thing to look at as well is there is a fear. The reason why people aren't more emotionally flexible or open or vulnerable is there is a fear. We have been almost raised to fear. You know, a lot of people that have been raised in emotionally immature families with emotionally immature parents, they curtail the full emotional and intellectual development of the child. They never really allowed the child to fully express themselves, make mistakes. You know, a lot of us were kind of raised in that my way or the highway environment, you know, where we got spanked if we were naughty and we were told we had to be a certain way. It curtails a person's emotional development. And then as we get older, we kind of have to deal with all that, you know. A sign of emotional maturity is emotional flexibility. If you wanted to, emotional people that are immature, they always make you feel kind of shut down. You need to shut up, or, you know, or they shut you out.
Well, they're judging emotions because they consider typically, you know, we've talked about this, they consider emotions a form of weakness.
Correct. And you find ways, and what that does, it makes people feel invisible. It makes people feel unheard, exhausted. It's an insensitivity. to other people's feelings, to other people's realities. And we all in a way have been, or at times have modeled that behavior, you know, kind of like, I don't even want to hear it. You know, that doesn't make any sense. You know, we have to learn to become more emotionally flexible. We have to understand that each person has a different reality based on their own upbringing, their own perceptions. It's like a slither of reality that each of us has. A reality that we literally are seeing that's just ours. But there are 8 billion people in the world that are manifesting, expressing, and living theirs. It will be different to ours. Why is that a problem? Why is being different a problem?
Well, I think each person, I think each one of us here right now, you know, wants to ask, should ask right now, okay, in terms of how I was raised, you know, by my parents or whoever raised me, to what extent was I allowed to be emotionally real and genuine and spontaneous and tell the truth about what I was feeling, tell the truth about what I was thinking? What was being modeled to me by my parents, you know?
It always boils down to those beliefs. The beliefs you picked up as a child that negated the way you were, your freedom of expression, your freedom to be yourself. And the anxiety or the issues or the problems that we have are all based on a false pattern of belief systems. The minute you see that it's just a repetitive thought that you've had over and over that has become a belief, even our beliefs about enlightenment itself, where do they come from? More often than not, they come from books or the Bible or religions, something that we've kind of decided that some, you know, elevated soul is telling us how to be, what their existential reality is, something that we look up to, idealize and emphasize as being the ultimate state in their words. And what happens then? You're completely negating your own existential experience.
The reality is you are the guru, you are the master, you are the Buddha, you are the one. And even in spirituality, we're told, it's implied we're supposed to defer to some authority. This is emotional freedom. Spiritual freedom means you have realized it for yourself. You see it for yourself. You don't need anybody else to tell you the way it is. That's what we're talking about. That kind of clarity, that kind of certainty and conviction. You don't need another spiritual book, another spiritual video, anybody else. You have seen it for yourself, and now you live.
You're living from a space where you have a mutual reciprocal communication with reality and each other. And a mutual reciprocal communication. It's the only way.
It's dynamic and changing, and at the same time, it's essential. It's an essence that is always there, that is a foundation in each moment. To be very clear, emotional freedom for us means, and again, we talk about these things all the time, you know, as far as I know, emotional freedom for us means it's not this or that emotion. It means that we are with our whole body and with our whole being in this moment, allowing that emotion to arise, that feeling to arise and be fully experienced and expressed. So in other words, it's spontaneity.
It is. And you reach a point where you insist on that emotional honesty. You insist on it. You're just not prepared to sacrifice your soul, your essence for anybody or anything. That I'm allowed to be me. I'm allowed to express myself. I'm allowed my feelings however they show up. It doesn't make me better or worse than. It's people that shut you down, that ignore you, that shut you out or give you the silent treatment. You know, all that really does is make you feel abandoned. You have to understand when people do that, they are emotionally immature. They want to abandon you because they're afraid of their own. They cannot get vulnerable with you. They cannot open up like you can. It scares them. Fear motivates silence. I'm just going to walk away. I can't handle this. There's no cooperation, no flexibility. You have to be very emotionally immature to be that type of person, to disregard another human being.
Well, they can't handle feelings, and so they shut them down immediately
Yes.
and walk away and go silent. And this is their way of controlling, because they simply cannot, they're not strong at all. They're actually weak. They cannot handle feelings. You know, this whole subject of feelings and emotions is not something, okay, well, I'll deal with that later. You know, I've got to go to work. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Actually, it's the core of everything else. It's the core of aliveness. It's the essence of aliveness. It's not something to deal with later on. It's something to deal with now in your life, in your job, in your relationships, in how you feel during the day. If you don't have emotional aliveness and emotional spontaneity, then you're really more of a zombie, you know? I mean, it's fascinating when you look at our society, our culture, certainly in the West, certainly in the United States. You know, what are we being taught? What are we conditioned to do from childhood? We're conditioned to be good slaves, good zombies, good obedient servants and workers. We're not taught to feel our truth and express our truth and be spontaneous and be joyfully alive. You know, we see that in children and we're envious of them and admire them. But in fact, that's what enlightenment is about, is you return to the natural, spontaneous, fearless authenticity, emotional authenticity of the child. But now you're an adult, you have the wisdom and the skills of the adult. And I want to say one last thing about what is this taking the red pill. It is, from my point of view, to understand that the way that we are manipulated, both individually and collectively, is through fear.
Absolutely.
So when in my individual moment, in my space, I deal with fear by going, this is just fear. This is a state of mind. This is a belief. And I choose love. I choose being aware. I choose anything other than, you know, being basically caught up and sucked into that fear. I am contributing to the collective consciousness and its ability to rise above that fear, because actually the masses, the collective, are way more powerful than any of the forces that would want to manipulate us and control us and suppress us.
We've all learned to express, we've learned that it's very dangerous to express our anger directly. We've been taught that to express any kind of anger directly is dangerous, not allowed, it's bad. When in fact, there's a neutrality about any emotion. We're allowed to, the nature of being a human being is expressing and experiencing all sorts of emotions. We don't know what we're going to feel next. We don't know what may happen to, you know, rub us up the wrong way next. And here we're living in a society where we've been taught that being angry is so bad and so wrong. What happens when we feel suppressed, when we don't express ourselves, when we keep quiet, when we aren't allowed to be ourselves? You see what has happened in society. You see it becomes too much for people. They can't hold it in anymore. What happened last night? It was a deep, unbelievable expression of anger. And we saw it all over the country. Thousands of people protesting, furious. Why? If people were able to express the anger as it arose, if there was an emotional flexibility in the world, if there wasn't this right and wrong and, you know, we have to be a certain way to fit in, these kinds of things would stop happening. Because we're afraid to be human. Why do you think people want to wake up in the first place spiritually? Because they don't feel comfortable being themselves. Something feels off, something feels wrong here. I need to escape. I need to wake up from a trance. What is that trance? That trance are all those beliefs that we've basically inherited, even genetically inherited, maybe sometimes, I think, in our DNA. It's you know, and it doesn't feel right because we're not really expressing ourselves. We're not being true to ourselves. We're not being ourselves. And we're looking for a way out. But the way out is to be yourself, is to allow yourself to express yourself, is to be vulnerable, emotional, flexibility. open. Even the freedom to feel your fear is okay. The freedom to be angry is okay. Within reason, you don't want to harm anyone, you know, but more often than not, if a person's able to just say, listen, I'm so angry right now, let's talk about it, let's have a communication, then you resolve it. It's unresolved because everyone's too afraid to even express it. It doesn't work. So we're seeing now in full color what I wrote about a purge in my book. It was an accident waiting to happen, individually and collectively. We cannot exist with this kind of suppression, internal suppression. It's not going to work. They're going to be these blow-ups. So how do we change? Well, we have to take responsibility for ourselves, our own space. We have to learn to express ourselves truthfully, with vulnerability, openly, and with love. Give ourselves a break. Relax, allow. I wrote down some more notes here. An emotionally immature person will never do their emotional work. For them, it's a no-no. It's too deep, it's too hard, and it feels too difficult. They would rather turn around, never have a relationship with a person again than actually have to expose their vulnerability. Okay? They are defensive usually. And they perceive an emotional person as being weak. Have you ever seen those people who, the minute somebody becomes emotional or cries, they think, oh, she's so weak, she's pathetic. You know, they perceive emotions as a weakness. Emotional labor is the expenditure of time, effort, energy in order to understand and fulfill our emotional needs. We all have emotional needs. We all want to feel loved. It's universal. We all want to feel freedom. It's universal. We all want to feel accepted. It's universal. We all have blood that's red flowing through our bodies in the same organs, brain, heart, kidneys, etc. There's something so unifying about knowing all that. And yet, what is this tendency to just need the separation? You know why? Because it's by being separate and unique that makes it interesting. In other words, if everybody was me, it would be a very boring world, you know, and I wouldn't want to exist with a lot of me's around. The fact that it makes it interesting, the fact that there are other people with different personalities, we get to bounce things off each other, understand each other, unite with each other, argue with each other, you know, create with each other. There's a beauty in that. Accept each other. You know, I'd love to see a world where there's just a lot more acceptance and there's a lot more ability to be free, freedom with emotional freedom. It's so weird that we're having this talk about emotional freedom, and last night was such an emotional expression of fury.
Well, I think it's appropriate because what does emotional freedom really mean? Does it mean you get to do whatever you want, say whatever you want? Well, when you're not in touch with your own shadow and you're not doing that work and you're projecting it on somebody else, you know, then you are not able to own the negative emotions. So then they get suppressed, and then whether it's an individual thing or a collective thing, like the riots that have taken place in the United States, you know, then it has to come out sooner or later. This is the thing. This is what I'm sure you've seen it. Everybody's seen it. We've seen that when things are suppressed and denied, they could still come out eventually, but they come out in a twisted way. So this work on the inner darkness, the subconscious, the shadow, it's the most important work that we can do after, even before, during, and after awakening. It's part of the deepening of the awakening, of humanizing and becoming real. But you know, even when we hear shadow, we don't really understand. We're talking about your feelings. When an awakened person is being, say, really nice or loving or compassionate, go look, they're being loving, compassionate, kind. Well, from my perspective, no, that's not what's happening. What's happening in that moment is just, that's what's happening. They're being spontaneous. That is the reality in that moment for them. It is entirely possible that in the next minute, somebody could say something or do something, and that very, you know, sweet, compassionate, kind, loving person all of a sudden blows up and shouts at somebody. And then everybody goes, oh, look, they're not so awake and they're not so enlightened because of the, look at the negativity there. But really, if you've done that journey, it is important for a lot of people to do this work post-awakening. But if you've done it, then from our experience, we're talking about living in the moment. And whatever happens, comes out is genuine and it's true. And it's the flow of life, the flow of the divine life through you.
But there is a restriction. In other words, an emotionally mature person is not going to suddenly blow up and cause a big fit and be nasty. They're going to use, there's no resistance. You feel what you feel, but you're open and honest about it. You know, right now you've really rubbed me up the wrong way. I'm furious. And then you can discuss why. You know, it becomes impossible when you're emotionally mature to overlook when someone you care for is having a hard time.
Well, I think I'm not emotionally mature then.
You're not. You're still working on it. And we are working on that together every day.
I'm not in that regard. I'm not in regard to like getting angry.
But you've become better. You have been working on it. At
And
least be honest.
It's the paradox of, you know.
You have anger issues.
At one time, I totally suppressed my anger because my father never allowed anger, ever. He didn't express it and it wasn't okay. So I had my anger and I thought, okay, I don't have any, right? That was my first step. And then eventually, of course, I'm an Enneagram 5. So my first step was to disconnect and pretend like I don't have those bad feelings I'm not supposed to have. Eventually, as I got older in my 20s, I began to realize I had them. And then I had to go on a journey, which went on for many years, of owning them. And then I began to realize how the anger was connected to my ability to be competitive and assertive and dynamic and get things done and feel my power and blah, blah, blah. And so I saw it was very positive. And so here I am, you know, I'm 69 years old and I'm like going, well, I certainly don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I certainly don't want to like, you know, throw anger out. But at the same time, it is a little bit like, you know, maybe it's I don't know. I'm just trying to be honest. Maybe it's a never ending story here of.
You've got work to do.
Well,
it's very simple. I'm still doing my emotional
It's a very living thing. It's a very, very living thing. It's not some static state. See, this is the problem. We were talking before about this idea of perfect, above human spiritual realization. We're saying that from our experience in everybody we know, every awakened person that we happen to know well, it's the same. We're all at work with being a human being, and we all have at least one thing, if not more than one, like mine is anger, then where I'm gonna be working on this my whole life. And yet it's also what is informing my life and giving it life. You see what I mean? This is the paradox of emotional authenticity. It also is something where now I can be human and I can say, mea culpa, you know, I was wrong. I shouldn't have gotten mad. I shouldn't have this, that, or the other thing.
So that's the beauty of authentic communication. I can see I lost it.
The owning the shadow doesn't mean, oh, I've owned it now, I'm good. You know, I never have to be diligent or vigilant or take responsibility for my actions now. Ananda's right. But there is definitely a coming to the other, a crossing the bridge into where you have owned it and now you have the full power of it, because the power is in the shadow too. The gold and the power, many of your talents, much of what you are that you really need to express is in the shadow. So you brought it out and you've owned it. So that's part of emotional freedom, but we're saying it's a dynamic, spontaneous, unfolding discovery. It's not a control. It's not a guarantee you're going to be this way or that way. It's an open-ended unfolding.
Yeah. When you have what, you know, let me say a large portion of people develop what we call a fantasy, a role self. The role self has to look, behave, and be a certain way. you're playing a role. It's not really authentic. It's not really being itself at all. In fact, it probably doesn't even know who itself is. It's playing a role, and it's self-defeating on many levels. It's you trying to make yourself lovable by being a good person. The definition of good, of course, is cultural. In Italy, couples scream and shout on the street, then they make friends. No one even blinks an eye. In the United States, if you have a fight outside, you'll probably be arrested and thrown in prison or fined $500 for being angry.
Well, you sure don't see it very much.
So when you're trying to force another person,
you don't see it here in San Diego.
Yeah.
When's the last time you saw
I
a
never
public
see
fight?
Anybody expressing anything.
Have you ever? I mean, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it's like zombie land. Everybody's acting like it doesn't feel.
Stepford Wives. Stepford Wives. Stepford Wives.
It's Pleasantville.
Hi, how are you? I am good. How is the weather? The weather is great.
Everything's just fine.
Yes.
Yeah, how are
We're
you?
fine.
It's a role. It's playing a kind of a role. Okay. And we all, in some way, have a fantasy that's very unrealistic, but it becomes very obvious to others. Often when you're in these sessions with us, I'm very aware of the role the student's playing, the spiritual role, I call it. My job is to get you. My job is to point out, where are you playing the silly role with me? Let's get real and honest. Who's really here? Who are you really under the hood? Because I want to feel your essence. That means I'm going to feel your array of emotions, the way you get angry, the way you get sad. Who am I? It's the biggest question. It's the biggest spiritual question. Who am I? Who is this? Can you see it's a role? Can you see how often our roles basically just don't work for us? It is a fantastic role. It's like the guru. The guru is not human. Oh my God, does he even go to the bathroom to pee? He'll take a crap? Oh no, he's a guru. He doesn't do these things. He flies around in bliss. Does that make any sense? Can you see how we idealize, how we fantasize? How we think we need to be a certain way in order to be spiritual. When you let that go, what is here? And you will always come to the same conclusion, I am.
I think we ought to talk about the difference for emotional freedom for women and emotional freedom for men. I think it's a different journey because you're working with a lot of women and
I work with a lot of men too.
Well, you're working with men too. I'm not saying you're not.
I love my male student.
My point is that my impression is I would like you to talk a little bit about what the journey of emotional freedom is for the female.
Well, I'm talking, okay. Well, I want to talk in general terms, if you don't mind, because I want to really talk about the pseudo self, which gets developed unconsciously. It's not deliberate. It's the way we survive. That's the fixation. Okay. It gradually develops. This role we play develops. It becomes a way we feel that we belong. It can even be positive or negative. It feels that's how I belong. That's my pseudo self. Your true self becomes totally invisible to you. You become what your parents, your society, your conditioning expects you to be. You become anxious too, because it's like you have to always play this role. It's not easy because you're not being authentic at all real with yourself, and it takes enormous effort to be who you're not. Spiritually bypassing. The more you express your true self, even to a partner, to a loved one, to a child, it doesn't matter who, to your teacher, the more real you become, the easier it becomes to be real all the time. But you have to take the baby steps. You have to have someone to really allow that. The reason there is a teacher-student relationship for a while with anybody is this is allowing you the ability to be authentic with at least one human being and get the feedback. In other words, when you're talking to somebody and you're having this one-on-one relationship, they are giving you direct feedback. There's only love. You know, in other words, I can totally be myself and say it like it is. I can talk about when I masturbate. I can talk about my sex life. I can talk about my relationships. I can talk about anything. And I feel the freedom to do it. The more you practice that, the more you actually able to start recreating it within your, you know, your other relationships in your life. Suddenly you are able to feel free, to feel safe. I would say with women, it's a lot easier when a woman is talking to a woman. There's certain things that we can say to each other, like, oh my God, I'm premenstrual. I'm in the worst mood. You know, you say that to a man and it's like, yeah, they kind of get it, but they've never had a period. They don't really understand what it's like to have your hormones raging and have a period, you know? So it's like there's something with women and women, and just as there is a guy with a guy. But I would say with guys and with men, there's still that underlying sense of being macho, needing to prove their manliness to one another. You know, I'm such a macho man.
With men, the comfort zone is to stay in the mind. So men have an unwritten agreement and this happens with students, which is something I have to be aware of when I'm talking with a man, is our comfort zone is the equivalent, even when we're having a conversation about spirituality or working on something related to awakening. It's sort of like the same comfort zone you would have talking about sports or the weather, that you're basically not making it personal and not making it intimate and not talking about feelings and not talking about your relationship and not talking about your
issues,
frustration with your job, etc.
That's the difference.
And yet what I have found, and Ananda's helped me a lot with this, is it actually, that's the grist for the mill. That's a lot of what needs to be processed and integrated along the way, is to start talking about that. You know, I used to wait until kind of the end of the journey to talk about that. Now I introduce it a lot sooner. I'm not like Ananda here, where I go for the jugular and talk about their sex life and stuff, but
I don't do that. No, but I want to get real quickly.
Well, whatever you're doing, okay.
Yes,
I'm not doing. It's very effective, but it wouldn't be me.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is me. What I'm doing now is, like, I had a recent conversation with somebody about their work and how important that was, and then as somebody else, well, actually with men, actually work comes up a lot now that I think about it. The guy before him, we also talked about work. And basically how to be emotional authenticity, emotional honesty in terms of work, in terms of self-expression, in terms of how are you making a living and how are you providing. What, you know, it can be soul deadening. So how can we own our soul power, which is our feeling, our capacity for emotional freedom, and you know, in terms of work,
men have more of a problem because this role self is more prevalent with the macho man, you know, and that's, you know, again, it's not their fault. It's the way we've all been raised. Remembering, I want you guys to always understand the role self, the personality self, let's call it, has an insecurity. It doesn't have its own source of energy. It is afraid of being revealed as an imposter. When you're always playing this role of, oh yeah, you know, I'm so successful, I've got everything under control, and you're not being honest, do you know how much energy that is, a life force, energy, prana, vitality it's taking to put on your show? And who is the show for? Why do you have a show? It's because you're afraid. You're afraid of letting go. You're afraid of being vulnerable. You're afraid of saying, I hate my job. I'm just giving I'm going to be extreme here. I know most of you probably don't hate your jobs, but I'm afraid of being myself. I'm afraid of talking about how maybe I actually can't stand my wife. We never have sex. You know, my job's awful. Actually, I'm terrified because you know, nothing I do is good enough for her. You know, where's the juice? What's really going on in your life? And why are you afraid to say it? Why are you afraid? How is it going to improve unless you're honest with yourself and with others? There has to be a level of self-honesty. This is the work. This is the journey, you see. This is how we change ourselves. And with that, the freedom of being who you are, as you are. Forget about your spiritual concepts. Who gives a shit? What is that going to help you?
Well, I want to ask you, do
You know?
women have to, are they dealing with authority? Are they dealing with, it's
Who?
not women. It's not okay to
Yes.
actually,
No, women are, well, women have been suppressed. You see, what happens with women is very interesting because it's emotional, it's psychological. You see, and again, you know, we've been taught that women are somehow weaker than men because we're so emotional, because we're less assertive, and because we've almost been genetically inclined. And I think there's a lot of room for that when you're a mother, when you're in the home, when you're taking care of babies. There has to be more of that kind of, you know, that female, that emotional body available to raise children. Selflessness. It's bizarre to me that mothers aren't becoming more awakened and men seem to be more enlightened. Why? How can that even be? They have got no idea what it means to be selfless. The minute you're a parent, oh, all of a sudden then my little me is not that important anymore. I have a baby. That becomes the way, you know, the ability to be selfless, the ability to put my little self aside and actually care for other. It becomes so clear, you know, when you're a parent. And yet so few parents take the spiritual. I don't think they have enough time. Maybe it's a time thing, I don't know. But I can tell you, when I have mothers coming on board, their ability to wake up is about, I would say, up to 60 or 70% quicker than a male's. Because they are naturally inclined to see the difference between little I, letting that go, and just the availability, the giving,
they've got
sharing.
Job experience with that.
You know, and it's bizarre to me because they should actually be the gurus.
So see, the path for waking up for a woman is, for many women, is actually different than it is for a man. That's kind of what I'm getting to here. And I'm glad you're talking this way, because I think it's very important, you know, because all of the old books are all oriented, they're by men and for men. And it's relatively recent that women were seen as being equally qualified for enlightenment. But not even so, the path for women is different.
But it's even male parents. So I'm not going to just say, because I can tell you that even a man who's a father has got a different understanding about reality, because they have also been working for, caring for, you know, it's a different understanding of selflessness, less self-referencing.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
but to me, there is a real need for women to hear that they have their own path, and trying to imitate the male path for many women is not going to work.
No, that's the
or
problem.
It's going to slow them down, or it's going
Yeah.
to be confusing.
You know, a lot of the times what has happened with women, in my opinion, not all women, but, you know, it's like, because women feel that they have suddenly become allowed to be, you know, have a voice, should I say, then what they do is they develop another role self that becomes almost more masculine. So they start behaving more like men. You know, right. They become more, but, you know, in fact, they're not really being themselves either, weirdly. They're just trying too hard, you know, because the joy about being a female, the feminine, the divine feminine, is the ability to remain vulnerable, to express your emotions. And so it's not about being like a man. It's about being able to be, you know, to be the feminine energy alongside the male energy. We have them both within us. It's becoming in touch with them both, and then letting them just be expressed in the way that they're naturally.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but for both male and female examples of great success, there's a split, you know. So for example, with the man, you could have a man who's a you know, big achiever, makes tons of money and all of that stuff, but he's not typically going to be an enlightened person. Then you have, you know, enlightened man who, you know, with a few exceptions, is not like really wealthy or considered.
But that's very.
Let me finish. Extremely successful on external terms. we have very few role models, even for men, of men who have achieved excellence in both areas, both external and internal, or enlightenment and wealth success. So I'm saying there's a parallel between men and women, because just like women, it's hard for women to achieve and be truly feminine and female, and be true to their heart and so on. Men are having the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in other words, oh, if I'm a love man, then, oh, I'm not going to be a billionaire, see, because then I have to get all involved in being cruel and competitive or whatever. Okay, I'm just saying the evidence says this is a very challenging thing to accomplish in both areas, you know.
Mm-hmm. But again, we shouldn't put these things in a box. One is perfectly able to have a wonderful job, become a millionaire, be enlightened, and be a father, and be a guru. Anyone can do anything. You know, we don't need to separate.
Well, I agree. I'm just pointing out. I mean, I can't think of anybody really that's a great example. I mean, I guess Eckhart Tolle is he's a millionaire, but you know, there aren't very many. You know, and I don't even know. I mean, he's one lucky bastard, basically. I mean, you know, what did he do? I mean, you know, somehow that all happened for him.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, so I'm just pointing out that there is a split in our society. There's a split within ourselves. You're talking about being emotionally genuine and free. And it may well be, for example, and I know what I've experienced in myself, the more actual emotional freedom you have in this moment, the more you're able to enjoy this moment and appreciate it. Actually, the less motivated you are to some extent to acquire things and have possessions and
nonsense. That's such a 5 thing. Oh my God. Okay, so let's move. You know, 5s are what we call, they are minimalists by nature.
Do you want to open it up for questions?
Yeah, I want to give a little bit of a practical advice so we can all work on our emotional bodies over the course of the while.
After you say something, I'm going to say something.
Okay, so some practical advice is always neutral observation. And one question: what am I feeling? Remain centered and try and operate from a calm perspective rather than like emotional reactivity. For me, that's really difficult. I'm an 8. I'm reactive by nature. I want to pounce, you know, but I've learned, take a step back, you know, become more neutral, centered, kind of detached frame of mind, but at the same time, you're allowing your feelings. You can count your breaths, relax your muscles, calm imagery, observe other people's behavior, watch them. Describe their facial expression, start reading body language. You can learn so much about a person doing this. What is the tone of voice? Tones are incredible. With Ramaji, I know his tone shifts and his facial expression changes. He can go from being like, you don't see any lines between his forehead, and all of a sudden when he's like, gets angry, he gets this like this wrinkled look, and I just want to get my Botox and inject it because it makes me scared. You know, like that wrinkled, you know, angry look when your eyes come close together. You know, you ask, what am I feeling? You start to spot, what are my emotionally immature behaviors? How am I responding here? What am I doing here? How am I, you know, what's happening with me, within me and around me? Notice not feeling okay. If you don't feel okay, notice, what am I feeling? Where don't I feel okay? Is it in my body? Ask yourself a question. What do I believe? What is the belief that's motivating this? Do I believe that I can't express myself? I can't be angry. I'm going to get a bad reception if I'm vulnerable or honest. And then pivot. What would my life be like if I drop this belief? What happens if I just drop this belief? What kind of shift will I make in my day-to-day experience? More often than not, you'll find without the belief, you feel so much better, you know? So you may want to even go through, and I say this all the time because it's almost like you feel you've gone through a layer of beliefs that are negative and atrocious. That's the first layer. Then you think, oh God, I'm free of my beliefs now. And then bam, you get triggered again. The universe is coming back. Are you really free? I don't think so. Why are you so triggered? Write it down again. What's my belief now? Why am I so angry? You know, for Ramaji and I have often said I'm just using you as an example. My anger is because I feel afraid that I'm not going to be heard. I'm not going to be accepted. I like using him as an example. He's a good example.
I have to be honest, I like getting angry.
And he does, he enjoys it.
I have to, it's true. And so I actually enjoy it, and that's the truth. And so for me, it's really an issue of the consideration is not whether or not it's okay to feel anger, but the consideration is I want to be angry and show and be respectful to the other person.
Mm-hmm. Very difficult to achieve.
So it's sort of like surfing a wave. You know, you're surfing this really big wave, and so the empathic, emotional, honesty is, to be feel my aliveness, and at the same time not at the expense of the other person, their feelings. And so, but I think I don't think I'm alone in this. I think whether it's anger or some other emotion, I think I'm guessing that for everyone there's a primary,
of course, tone
that they tend to go to when either they're very alive or maybe very frustrated, or needing to bring their energy up to deal with something. I'll see my anger come up if like I have to do something I don't want to do, but I really have to do it, which often may be a physical thing. Then I'll get angry, but because I'm angry, I can go into action. I move into action. So actually the anger is very constructive. So, I mean, none of this stuff is
but it's a typical
black and
5
white.
thing.
I know it's a typical 5 thing, but I'm saying, as you study yourself, you will see that it's not about becoming a certain way, but rather being the way you are, so that you work with the living energy. Not trying to fit into some mold or some box, but let it live in you and then work with it like clay.
Yes.
Mold the clay, the living clay, and let it unfold and make mistakes, and you learn from them. And then what you're bringing is life itself, because you're happy and you're acting as a free being. And it doesn't mean you're perfect, and it doesn't mean you don't make mistakes, but your aliveness, your authenticity is the message. And for somebody else, their aliveness and authenticity may feel different and be expressed differently, but they will know that it's their truth for them.
Observation is not passive. Observation is not passive. It's an active process.
Well, that's actually what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really paying attention and really noticing, and then making
in the now.
Corrections,
you're observing.
Corrections in the moment, because you have something to work with, because you're not in denial.
And what happens is, slowly but surely, you start to develop a confidence that you can handle what is really going on. You can let go of the role. But in order to start doing so, you have to start practicing observation. You have to get real. You have to be honest. And I can tell you, it's scary as a hell in the beginning. But it's worth it.
Okay, I want to add, in terms of taking the red pill, the collective shadow that we are all facing now, that's being in front of us on the TV, etc. Getting in touch with our individual shadow enables us to connect to and recognize the collective shadow. So we can then understand what's going on. Why are these people doing what they're doing? To give an extreme example, I used to wonder what was the deal with Adolf Hitler? How could he do what he did? But I came to realize, as I worked with my own shadow, I had an Adolf Hitler in me. So you come to, then this is where compassion comes from. This is where kindness comes from, because you realize, you know what, that's in me too. I could do that. In theory, I could do that. That's a part of me. That's a part of my shadow. It's part of the human shadow, the collective shadow. So however it looks for you, however it works out for you, it enables you to connect to and understand and have compassion for, which means the ability to do constructive work with whatever's going on out there.
You have to own what is inside.
And
it is always, the outside is a reflection of what's going on inside.
And thus not be afraid of it, because, you know, having owned it in yourself, you now realize the external manifestation is actually essentially an unconscious outpicturing that people are doing that haven't owned their own individual shadow. So we have the collective shadow demonstration, like these riots here in the United States this week.
That's what I was
basically
saying.
They're not facing their own shadow. They don't know what it is. So collectively,
they're not allowed to be angry. It's all this not allowed to be, and then it becomes an energy that you can no longer suppress, and there's a blow.
Yeah.
A blow up. It always works that way.
And then, you know, just one thing I wanted to add when you were talking about questions to ask yourself, if you're a deep empath, then you may be taking on stuff from other people. And if you are doing that, if that is a possibility for you, then you can ask the question, not what is the matter with me, but who is the matter with me?
And
is there somebody else where I might be picking this up?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if you're a deep empath or psychic or super sensitive, this could be a reality for you. So it's something you want to have in your toolbox.
Mm-hmm. And I always say one other thing that's practical to do: aim for relating first. I just want to try and relate to this person. Relatedness. It doesn't necessarily have to start off being a communication with, like instead of a communication with kind of no goal and no emotional exchange, the minute you try and create a relatedness, a communication with a goal, with an emotional exchange, you start to, your goal is to somehow relate. You know, it's so important that people learn to relate to one another. It has to happen.
Let's relate to the chat.
Simply relate.
Okay, so we're going to go to the chat now. We're going to go to these questions here. Yeah, well, that's what all this is. That's what we're doing. Exactly. Okay, I guess we'll start at the top here. Good. It's always nice if people disagree with us. We'd like that very much. Yeah. Well, you know, okay, so what happens when being your authentic self seems to offend and hurt others? Well, you know what? It's hard to answer, because what could be happening is you're actually really being yourself, and you've been holding back because you're basically, these people you're dealing with are phony, and they're afraid of real emotion, and so they're going to judge you and project their darkness, their shadow on you, and make you a scapegoat. So, you know, and wait a minute, and like I was talking about my anger, I could be authentic with my anger, but it is true I could offend somebody or hurt somebody, and so that's my learning curve. So you know, you can ask yourself, am I really is this the real me? I was shocked about who the real me was. On the one hand, it's more loving, but on the other hand, it's more angry. And you know, I lost basically everybody that was my friend at one time, and I moved on. And basically, they couldn't handle. They just couldn't handle reality. They couldn't handle somebody being real. So, you know, I honestly, my reaction to that is offending and hurting other people when you're being emotionally authentic, may be pretty much built into the equation.
There's a wonderful quote by Plato when he goes, "No one is more hated than he who tells the truth." You have to realize that the moment you awaken, the moment you're being yourself, the moment you're being truthful and honest, it's scary for people.
Yeah.
You know, people don't want to hear it. They want to cling to their pseudo roles. They don't want to become emotionally vulnerable. The majority of people aren't ready. They want to cling to the fantasy. But remember, have compassion, because we were there too. It's not about proving anything to anybody. It's about having confidence in your individuality. So when you have confidence in your individuality, I can be me. I'm an individual. I am unique. And I can respect your individuality, your uniqueness, whatever your emotional truth is right now. I can attempt to relate to you on a real level. If you want to meet me, wonderful. If you cannot meet me anywhere, there's nothing much I can do. Then there will be a kind of a vibrational separation, which is what we're seeing right now in the universe. It's almost like you're going to be on a vibrational level. You're going to attract certain people to you. Those people usually will be like attracts like. You will usually disperse of those that are not on the same vibrational level. You don't have to try too hard to do it. That's the law of attraction.
Yeah, if you're really being yourself, and of course we're assuming and we're saying you're doing your own work, you're owning your own shadow. So we're not talking about dramatizing and dumping your stuff on other people. We're talking about being more emotionally mature than that. So you're actually being a forceful expression of the truth for yourself. You're not holding back. You're really being real. And this is what happens. The people of a lower vibration or lesser consciousness are not interested in awakening or spirituality or love. They're going to run the other way.
Remember, when you wake up, you love yourself, the self. The self is sacred. It's so sacred that it's automatic you're going to feel compassion. That's the nature of waking up. Compassion and a sense that I am actually unified on some very deep level with everyone that I'm associating with. You will automatically react and respond differently. It doesn't mean you won't at times get pissed off. It doesn't mean you're going to love each individual. On a superficial level, yes, we all separate and individual, but at the same time, you fall in love with the sacred self. And that means it has its own way of expressing itself.
Yeah. I mean, if I get mad.
It's called self-respect.
If I'm getting mad, that person is myself. That hasn't gone away. That's still there.
The reason you feel bad after getting mad is only because you learn that you're only getting angry at self. What's the point? You might as well have a conversation. But for you, I think your anger is very much in the vitality. Ramaji can get angry and kind of because he's got to do so much and then he does it, but then afterwards, I'm so glad I did all that. Because fives need to feel that vitality.
And maybe for a five, any kind of emotional.
Exactly. It gives them vitality.
Any kind of big emotional juice feels like a tremendous amount of voltage. They feel alive because they're usually being so neutral.
Well, the vitality, the energies in the shadow. So for a five, when they feel that anger, when they feel that like lust, when they feel the greed, it's like, yes, you can use it towards
all right, so we had somebody say, they're experiencing this with their family, etc. And we would expect a lot of people to experience this, especially nowadays, because the lines are being drawn. People are thinking they have to take one side or another.
The other. Remain compassionate.
So we have, I hear you on the value of emotional expression, but don't you feel the complete histrionic emotional reactivity in our culture without real grounded awareness is a huge issue in our unconscious world? Yeah, well, we're not advocating a histrionic, ungrounded reaction at all. I mean, if you're in touch with your shadow, if you've owned your own stuff, even if you do dramatize it, you're going to know it's your stuff.
The only reason there is histrionic emotional reactivity is because we have not allowed ourselves to communicate a real truth, our expression in our day-to-day lives. It gets built up in cultures and societies, and then you get a rise up of anger, a rise up of what do they call them? Riots. I've never seen riots before. I was not in the United States like in the 60s. Gary G and Ramaji and some of you were, right? Like
I participated in riots in just demonstrations against the Vietnam War. Okay, but we want everybody to understand, we're talking about the fact that you have been raised to not be yourself. You have been raised to not be emotionally authentic, to not experience emotional freedom. So be very careful when your thought process and your belief system is saying it's not okay for me to feel and express exactly the way I feel right now. In other words, complete freedom to be totally real and honest and authentic with your emotions and feelings. Be very aware that you have been taught, almost all of us, I can say, have been taught to be shut down, to pretend, to play a role, to behave the right way. God forbid we should actually tell the truth, express the truth, rebel against the system and really be ourselves.
You're allowed to have emotional needs, desires, feelings.
It's not about other, in a way, it's just not about other people. You know, the whole thing about love and compassion is really more about yourself. It's about, I'm really going to be the real me. And whatever that real me is, so be it. Now, what it turns out is the real me for us human beings is a good thing. It's a beautiful essence. And it is love and peace and kindness and generosity and all of that. So it's about being the real you, and what comes out, what comes out. It's not about other people. They're already you.
I'll tell you, the funniest thing happens after my kind of awakening. And then, you know, as I started to express myself more openly, yes, many people fell away. And some of them, you know, and it wasn't an easy time. But for example, when we went to Germany or wherever it is that we went, and we actually were around friends and other people and other seekers or whatever, you know, everyone, whenever we left, people were crying and, oh, we don't want you to go, we want you to come back. And I said to Ramaji, you know, isn't it funny? What do you think it is? Like, why did they want us to stay? Why did they enjoy us so much? Or when I went to Woodstock and with Gary G, what was just the best thing about being with Gary G? Because being ourselves, there was absolutely no pretense. When Ramaji got angry, he got angry. And Gary G and I wanted to go drum, we went to drum and dance. You know, it was a freedom of being that people sense when they're around you. That's all it is. It's not some enlightened whatever, oh God, oh, you know, like, oh, I'm shaking because this person's so whatever. It's just, they're actually being authentic and real and themselves. Wow. Big deal.
I compare it to being like a little child, only you have the, you know, the experience and the, hopefully the maturity of an adult. Basically,
I'm working on that.
I mean, I'm basically a big kid, you know. Okay, so working on being with children has opened my heart. Yes, thank you.
It will. I want people to work. My nerves are not ready for my generation, you know. It's for the rest.
So men, why do certain men believe they have to leave their wife and child behind to live their spiritual path? Well, you know, the Buddha did that, right? So it goes back a long ways. Mm-hmm. I think, you know.
But it's metaphorical as well.
Well.
It's extremely metaphorical. You know,
but I think it's historical.
It's historical, metaphorical, but it doesn't have to be that way for all men. You know?
Okay, I didn't say it was.
I don't know why it is, because I don't necessarily agree with that.
I want to tell a story from men I've worked with, and what I used to hear a lot was I'd ask, why aren't you in a relationship? You know, and they said, well, I was in one, but you know, I couldn't
meditate for 10 hours a day.
I couldn't meditate as much as I wanted because the woman was constantly asking for my attention or had this or that. So I decided to isolate, then it's just me and I just deal with me. And so my answer to them was, is your meditation is crap then. And your meditation doesn't include life then. So you're basically full of shit. You're
they at a level, but they haven't come back down to earth.
It was an immature phase. In other words,
yeah.
we totally advocate, we're very tantric in that sense. We totally advocate the power of a relationship for growth in every possible way. But the thing is, relationships are advanced.
Where did Buddha go after he left, when he woke up?
He went to the forest. And
after he woke up, didn't he go back home?
He went back and said hi and then left again.
Oh, how do you know he left again?
Well, I've read.
He went back home. That's the point.
No, he didn't. He went back home.
And then he taught. But he went back home and apologized.
He apologized.
Because yes.
And then he left again.
And you know what I would have told him? I would have said, fuck you.
His son ended up.
For just leaving me in your enlightened state.
And his son ended up.
You know, up yours. I'll never come back here. I found myself another prince and goodbye.
Well, that's a good question. Well, what did happen after?
Yeah, he came home. He never stayed in the forest under the tree.
No, I think
he went home to say sorry to his wife. I was such a fool for leaving you.
And then he left again.
Yeah.
We're not experts on that, so somebody may have a better.
I'm joking. You should laugh. That is a joke.
Is that
You
a
know?
joke?
Yes.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
yes and no, actually. I'm going to think about
I know
it.
it's
I
not.
don't know what
I know
would
it's
be.
not a total joke.
No, it actually isn't
I know
a
you
total
think.
joke.
Actually, when you think about it, it makes the Buddha, who's this like
Makes him look like an absolute asshole.
a deadbeat dad.
Yeah.
Quite frankly,
Yeah.
a really bad one. You know. But
I mean, I'm going to leave my kids and go meditate for 10 hours a day so that I can become enlightened. And then, I mean,
But you know, it shows that it's very clear that some men feel they need that, you know, and what's the answer to that?
Don't have children.
Yeah, I agree.
And don't get married then.
Well,
you know?
don't have children. I think you'd still get married.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave your wife. Then don't do it.
Yeah.
If that's what you need.
Okay. I question. I think
Totally selfish. Yes, I agree with that.
Well, yeah, I think that's true. You know, speaking as an Enneagram 5, I think the need to feel separate from others is legitimate.
Fives fives are very clever with their spiritual bypassing. Their ability to be objective, detached and all that. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm so detached and I'm so spiritual but they naturally detached. So for them, meditation is opposite. Get involved in life, make connections, attach yourself. It works in the other way, you know. You know, and I see all the fives nodding like Angelica. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody seems
it's
have
difficult.
very good knowledge about these issues.
Mm-hmm. I also feel sometimes upset, compassionate, and frustrated beyond measure at people's emotional immaturity. It's something I have to deal with on a day-to-day level every day right now because I'm innate. I want to protect the underdog. I want the world to work. I want to make order out of chaos. That's the way my nature is. It saddens me to see the chaos.
I think the practical truth is that if you're dealing with somebody who is significantly less emotionally mature than you, is that if you're going to have to deal with this person or you want to choose to deal with that person on an ongoing basis, you will simply have to suck it up. You will have to be the more mature person. And in a certain way, you will have to eat their darkness. Mm-hmm. And that's how it is. I don't know. I don't have another answer for that. It can be very difficult.
Very.
But in the end, really it kind of boils down to is the person you're dealing with, are they willing to do their work? If they're willing to do any work on themselves, then your sacrifice could be tremendously helpful to them. Mm-hmm. But if you're dealing with people who are really unwilling,
rigid and emotionally immature people will be rigid,
and they're terrified of emotions and feelings, and they don't want to look at their shadow, and they just, as a habit, project everything on somebody else, including you. It may not be a very fulfilling situation, no matter how loving and vulnerable and
I like your hair, Jen.
Sacrificing you are.
It looks beautiful. I almost didn't recognize you. You were a blonde and now you're a brunette. It looks beautiful.
All right, here we have someone saying the idea that emotions are layered is important. I found that there was a lot of hurt under my anger. Felt less vulnerable to be angry than to feel the pain of the hurt.
I agree. I have the same
Yes,
thing.
this is true. This is true. However, maybe it's just me. But
no, baby, it's issue. You've got an issue with that.
With what?
That we're working on.
With what?
It's not just you.
What do I have an issue with?
Anger.
I don't have an issue with anger.
No, it's kind of like, you know.
You have an issue with my anger. Okay, that's different. And the other thing is.
Yes, he's right.
I don't actually have that much of an issue with my anger. I'll be quite honest.
No,
you know. But so this point is a good one, though. You know, and it's legitimate, and that's a very good psychological point. However, from my point of view, anger most definitely can arise not on the basis of hurt, not on the basis of past pain, not on the basis of story or history. It can simply arise. It is an authentic, genuine emotion. It is not bad. Okay? So I really think that there's a lot of people out there who think love and anger are like that. Love's good, anger's bad. I absolutely don't agree at all.
Anger is needed there's such a thing as righteous anger too. For example, when somebody's attacking you, you are allowed to feel angry and stick up for yourself. anger is only a problem when it's kind of projected anger, blaming, shaming. When you own your anger, and I'm angry and this is why, again, it's just about emotional maturity. And anger I'm an 8, so I'm always angry. 8's always angry. I'm always angry.
See,
I feel anger.
That's how we get along. I'm always angry too. You know, I have anger. I have something. I have an aggressiveness that's simmering right under the surface, and it's always there, and it comes forward, you know, like that.
Anger doesn't worry me so much. It's just I don't want to take my anger. It's mine. It's my anger. I don't have to take it out on anyone. I can feel it, and I love the way it feels because I have a ton of energy.
Well,
for me, it's a vitality.
We both have zero tolerance for bullshit.
Yeah.
And basically, that zero tolerance for bullshit is a form of aggressiveness. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. That's simmering right under the surface. It's not the need to attack and hurt somebody. It's like this kind of vigilance about, oh, okay, you know, be totally alive, be totally ready right now. Boom, you know, be real. Boom, 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 boom. And not passive, not watching, not wondering, but engaging, moving towards, moving in.
But there is a truth to what he's saying, because I spent about 5
absolutely.
years recognizing how the anger was hiding the vulnerability, the pain.
Yeah. Okay. I think we looked at everybody's questions. Anybody else have a question? Anybody else have a point or disagree with us about anything we've said? Because
I agree, Jennifer.
The media is manipulating. Yes, the media is manipulating our emotions, and they're really not even telling us things.
They're not even telling us.
Not even showing
truths.
things that are going on. They're spinning, you know, the mass media.
I don't blame you for being angry.
Yeah, you have to walk your truth, whatever that is. Is there another way? I don't think so.
That's a complicated situation.
And yeah, when you have children and you have these relationships.
Because you have to also think about the child and the relationship to the father. That's a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
It's a situation that would, I can't respond to that or react to it without understanding more about it.
I'm sorry, I'm reacting to the next one. I love anger. I could never open a
jar of pickles without it. I love you too, Trish.
That's so honest. That's exactly what I'm talking about, actually. Exactly.
Are we ready for the rasa now?
Anger keeps you awake. Yeah, in Tibetan Buddhism and like the teachings of Chogyam Trungpa, they talk about anger. They have a version of I believe it's the 5 emotions. And these and it's a great study if you haven't had a chance to look at it. There's gosh, what is it? But anyway, there's another book by in Tibetan Buddhism about this. But anyway, with Chogyam Trungpa, he talks about the 5 wisdom emotions. So basically, anger leads to clarity, as somebody is pointing out here. Anger keeps you awake. So spiritual or righteous anger or sacred anger could then actually, facilitate clarity. Whereas the other 4 emotions that they talk about, each has a positive, non-dual or awakened expression.
It's very simple. What is my motivation? If it's the motivation is to be right, to prove a point, if it's all ego-based so that the role self doesn't lose itself, then if your anger is coming from a place where the motivation is truly because you feel threatened or you feel very upset about something very real, there's a reason for an emotional truth. There's a reason the anger's arising. You want to understand, you want to observe and understand what the motivation is. You want to make that pause, understand your own anger, understand your own self. Remember, you have to become grounded in your individuality. The only way you can do so is when you become emotionally honest with yourself.
And I think it's going to be different for every person and for every type. So it's not, there is no good, bad, black, white about any of these emotions, whether it's fear, anxiety, irritation, anger, depression, sadness, grief, regret, shame, guilt.
What is it?
They're all to be understood, to be experienced, embraced, and lived, and then we don't transcend them so much as transform them, and the energy then is able to come forward, come out of us in a way that is constructive.
I agree. Remember, so let's end, because it's already what, one?
Well, it's 5 minutes to one.
So I just wanted to end up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, are we ready for the?
Yeah, we're going to take a little break and then give the rasa. But I just, from another practical advice to everybody, is just remember that you want to ask yourself, what is my motivation? How am I protecting myself from vulnerability and closeness? When you ask yourself these questions, you start to understand yourself in a different way. And remain grounded in your individuality. Okay, so having said all that, it was wonderful seeing everyone. Let's take a break and
yeah, we'll take a
go to the
bathroom
men's
break,
room or the ladies' room, and then we'll give you guys the rasa.
And when we come back, please have a video or a photo up so that we have a visual to give the rasa to. Okay, everybody, please. We're gonna have our little break now. Thank you. And sharing this satsang with us and inspiring us to do this. We're very grateful to you. And
we are.
Yeah.
We love you guys. Okay. Are we ready?
Yes, we're ready. Okay, here we go with the
close your eyes, relax, receive the love.
Yeah, suntan on the beach, getting a massage, just relax and receive. Okay, here we go.
That was your RASA, everyone. We loved seeing you here today. You're all amazing. And I want you guys to have an amazing month. Hang in there. And we'll see you in the last Saturday in June.
Yes, thanks everybody. We really appreciate you being here. And
Thank you, Valerie.
in the future, like if you have any questions, anything that you would like us to cover in a satsang, because we're having one basically the last Saturday of every month, let us know. If there's a topic or a question, just send it to me or to Ananda. We love hearing from you. Thank you again so much.
Thank you,
Love
guys.
you all.
Have a wonderful weekend. Gary G,
And thanks, Gary G. You're awesome.
the best. Thank
You're
you,
the
Gary
best.
G.
You're the best.
Could not happen without Gary G.
Gary G is, I can't even describe. I mean,
So much love.
It couldn't happen without you two guys either. Believe me.
Yeah, it could.
my
Oh, we need you.
appreciation just grows and grows. I just
We love you, Gary G.
look
Love
forward to
you.
getting out your part of your neck of the woods eventually, Gary G.
And send Anne love.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
Okay. Bless you guys. Have fun.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.